So picture this. It's 1922, and you are the renowned psychiatrist, Carl Jung.
Oh, wow. Okay. Setting the stage early.
Right. And you're currently locked in this, like, really bitter, super high-stakes intellectual rivalry with your former mentor.
Sigmund Freud.
Exactly, the legendary Sigmund Freud. And you are trying to outwit him. You know, you want to establish your own entire school of analytical psychology and fundamentally change how humanity understands the unconscious mind, which, I mean, that requires immense...
Oh, just unprecedented intellectual firepower.
Unprecedented. Right. So how do you do it? Like, do you go to every conference? Do you network aggressively in all the little cafes in Zurich? Do you answer every piece of correspondence immediately?
You definitely do know.
You do the exact opposite. You buy this plot of land in the woods near this small village of Bollingen, right on the shores of Lake Zurich.
Yeah.
And you build a rustic 2-story stone house.
The famous tower.
Yeah, the tower. And there is no electricity. None. When it gets dark, you use oil lamps. When it gets cold, you go out and chop wood and light a fire. And every single morning, you lock yourself in a private office for 2 solid hours to write. And you keep the key with you at all times. Nobody is allowed in.
And, you know, if you look closer at Jung's life during that specific period, this wasn't some, like, relaxing vacation home. I mean, Jung couldn't even afford a real vacation at that time.
Right.
This was a highly strategic retreat built for one very specific purpose, and that was to facilitate this intense, almost painful state of distraction-free concentration.
Yeah.
He was, you know, intentionally stepping away from a highly lucrative, bustling clinical practice in Zurich just to wring every last drop of value out of his own intellectual capacity.
And the deliberate isolation, you know, the stone tower in the woods, I think that is the perfect starting point for today's deep dive. Yeah. Because today, we are taking a massive stack of material, specifically the insights from computer science professor Cal Newport's definitive book, Deep Work.
Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World.
That's the one. And we are going to extract the core nuggets that you, the listener, need to understand. Because Cal Newport isn't just giving us, like, little productivity hacks here.
Yo, not at all.
This is a masterclass in rewiring your brain.
It really is. And the mission for today's deep dive is incredibly ambitious, honestly. We want to equip you with what is essentially the ultimate 21st century superpower.
Superpower, yeah.
Like, we aren't going to tell you how to organize your inbox folders or, you know, how to type faster. We are talking about fundamentally altering how you operate in a professional setting. We want to explore how to actually thrive in this increasingly distracted, shallow information economy while at the same time finding profound meaning in your daily efforts.
Okay, so let's unpack the terminology right away because there's this very clear dichotomy that frames this entire deep dive. Everything we're going to discuss rests on the difference between two concepts.
Right.
Deep work and shallow work.
Exactly. So let's start with deep work. This refers to professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration. Activities that push your cognitive capabilities to their absolute limit.
Like pushing the brain until it sweats.
Yeah, exactly. These are the efforts that create new value, that improve your skills, and that are incredibly hard for anyone else to replicate. So Carl Jung, writing in his tower, wrestling with all the complexities of the human psyche, that is the quintessential example of deep work.
Right. And then the flip side of that coin is shallow work, which these are the non-cognitively demanding logistical style tasks. And the key identifier here, I think, is that they're very often performed while you are distracted.
Constantly distracted.
Like, think of acting as a human network router. You're constantly pinging messages back and forth on Slack, moving emails around, attending those status meetings where, let's be real, nothing is actually decided.
The worst.
Yeah, these efforts do not create much new value in the world, and frankly, they're very easy to replicate or automate.
Right. And if we fully grasp what deep work is, you know, this intense, rare concentration, we first need to figure out why it is so uniquely vital right now. Because, I mean, Jung was doing this in the 1920s. The world has changed quite a bit since then.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, so we need to look at the modern digital restructuring of our current economy to understand why deep work is the definitive superpower of the modern era.
So to see that bigger picture, we can lean on this economic analysis by MIT researchers Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee. They coined this term, the Great Restructuring.
Right, the great restructuring. And their premise is that the unprecedented growth and impact of digital technology, so intelligent machines, automation, AI, all that, is radically transforming our labor markets.
Oh, absolutely.
In this new economy, the middle is just getting hollowed out.
Mm.
But they identify three specific groups of people who are going to absolutely thrive. They're the ones who will reap a disproportionate amount of the benefits of this new intelligent machine age.
Okay, let's walk through these three groups. So the first group is what they call the high-skilled workers. And these are the people who can work creatively and, effectively with complex, intelligent machines.
Because as machines get smarter, they inevitably automate lower-skilled routine jobs. But if you have the ability to work with these complex machines, like to tease valuable results out of them, your economic value just skyrockets.
Do we have an example of that?
Oh, yeah. The definitive example here is Nate Silver. Back in the 2012 election, he basically became a one-man traffic machine for the New York Times.
Oh, I remember that.
Right. He accurately predicted the voting outcomes across the country. But he didn't do that by just typing, who will win the election into Google or by having a really good gut feeling.
Right. He was essentially acting as a high-level conductor for these really complex digital instruments.
Exactly. He was feeding massive databases of thousands of disparate state polls into a highly complex statistical analysis system called Stata.
Okay, Stata.
And he was using a programming language called SQL to manipulate and query massive data sets. And SQL isn't something you just learn in an afternoon.
Yeah, I've tried. It's not easy.
Right. It requires a deep understanding of relational algebra. And Stata requires this intense grasp of statistical mechanics to run multiple regressions and create custom probabilistic models. But Nate Silver mastered those highly technical, incredibly difficult tools. Because he could work alongside the intelligent machines, he became invaluable.
Wow. Okay, so that brings us to the second group that wins in this new economy.
Yeah.
The superstars.
The superstars. These are the absolute best in their respective fields because high-speed data networks and collaboration tools have essentially destroyed regionalism. Think about it. If you need a computer programmer or a specialized consultant or like a graphic designer, you don't have to hire the best person in your local town anymore.
Right. You can hire the best person in the world.
And if you can hire the best person in the world, why on earth would you settle for the second best?
You wouldn't.
Exactly. David Heinemeier Hansson is a brilliant example of this. He is this ace programmer who created the Ruby on Rails framework.
Ruby on Rails.
Oh,
okay, unpack that for us.
Yeah, so to understand why that's important, Ruby on Rails is basically a massive shortcut for building web applications. Before it existed, programmers had to write a ton of repetitive code from scratch for every single new website.
That sounds exhausting.
It was. So Hansen built a system that automated all the boring, repetitive parts. He didn't just write code. He built a tool that hundreds of thousands of other coders rely on. And that level of superstar skill means he can work remotely from Spain, making an absolute fortune because the market for talent is now a universal bazaar.
Wow.
If you are the absolute best, you take the lion's share of the market and everyone else is just fighting over the scraps.
That makes total sense. And just for thoroughness, the third group of winners in the new economy are the owners.
Right, the owner.
Those with access to massive capital to invest in these new technologies. Think of like legendary venture capitalists like John Doerr. But since most of us listening don't have a few spare billions of dollars lying around to invest in AI startups,
Sadly, no.
we're going to focus entirely on those first two groups, the high-skilled and the superstars. Because those groups are accessible. You can join them, but only if you develop specific skills.
Yes. And to join those groups, you absolutely must possess two core abilities. First, the ability to quickly master hard things. Technology changes so rapidly. You have to be able to learn complex new systems, new languages, new frameworks constantly.
Right.
And second, you need the ability to produce at an elite level in terms of both quality and speed. Because it's not enough to just learn the skill. You have to transform that latent potential into tangible, valuable results that the market actually cares about.
And here I think is the connective tissue of this entire philosophy. Both of those core abilities, mastering hard things or producing at an elite level, they depend entirely on your ability to perform deep work.
Completely.
So let's break down the actual biological science of depth. How does deep focus physically change your brain to help you learn?
Well, to learn hard things quickly, you have to engage in deliberate practice. And neurologically speaking, deliberate practice is all about a substance called myelin.
Oh, myelin. I love this stuff. It's this white fatty tissue that grows around our neurons, right?
Yes, exactly. When you learn a new skill, whether it's an intellectual skill like managing a SQL database or a physical skill like playing the violin, that skill eventually reduces down to a specific circuit of neurons in your brain.
Okay.
And when you focus intensely on that specific skill, you force that exact neural circuit to fire. This repetitive, isolated firing triggers specialized glial cells in your brain called oligodendrocytes.
Oligodendrocytes. Say that 3 times fast.
Right. But they are the unsung heroes of learning. When these oligodendrocytes sense a specific neural circuit firing repeatedly and cleanly, they begin to wrap layers of myelin around the axons of those neurons.
Like insulation.
Exactly like electrical insulation on a copper wire. It prevents the electrical signal from leaking out, which allows the neurons to fire faster, cleaner, and with far less effort. To be truly great at something, to master a hard skill, is basically to be heavily myelinated.
That is so cool. So think about what happens when you are distracted. Say you're trying to learn a complex coding language, but you also have like a dozen browser tabs open, your phone is buzzing on the desk, and you've got a podcast playing in the background. What is happening to those oligodendrocytes?
Oh, they are completely confused. If you are in a state of low concentration, you are firing way too many circuits simultaneously and haphazardly. The coding circuit is firing, the who just texted me circuit is firing, the what's for lunch circuit is firing.
Total chaos.
Absolute chaos. And because the firing is chaotic, you cannot isolate the specific group of neurons you actually want to strengthen. Distraction physically prevents the myelination process. You literally, biologically, cannot learn hard things quickly if you are distracted.
Wow. Okay, so deep focus equals myelin, and myelin equals skill mastery. That covers the learning side of it. But what about the second core ability? Producing at an elite level. How does deep work fuel production?
For that, we have to look at the cognitive cost of our modern workflow. There's a business professor named Sophie Leroy, and she studies this phenomenon she coined attention residue.
Attention residue.
Yeah. She noted that in the modern workplace, we rarely just sit down and do one thing until it's finished. We are constantly switching tasks. We go from a meeting to an email inbox, back to a project file, over to a Slack channel, and back again.
We think we are multitasking, but really we are just rapid switching.
Right, and that switching has a massive tax attached to it. Leroy actually proved this in her laboratory experiments. She would start subjects on a highly demanding task, like working on complex word puzzles.
Right.
Then, right in the middle of it, she would interrupt them and force them to transition to a completely different, challenging task, like reading resumes and making hypothetical hiring decisions.
Oh, wow.
And what she found was that when you switch from task A to task B, your attention doesn't cleanly transition with you. A residue of your attention remains stubbornly stuck, thinking about that original task.
I always think of this like cooking a really complicated dinner.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Like you've got 4 pots on the stove, you're timing everything perfectly. That's your primary task.
Yeah.
Then the doorbell rings. You walk away to answer the door. That's the interruption, the transition to the new task. But you left the burner on. Your brain is still cooking the first task, burning up valuable mental resources while you're standing at the front door trying to have a coherent conversation with a delivery driver.
Yes.
You can't give the delivery driver your full attention, and you might even mess up signing the receipt because a significant portion of your cognitive capacity is basically panicking about the kitchen catching on fire.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. Leroy's experiments prove that people experiencing this attention residue perform significantly worse on the new task. The thicker the residue, the worse the performance. Your executive control takes a really long time to reorient.
So if you are working on a strategy document and you constantly glance at your inbox every 10 minutes just to, stay on top of things, you are repeatedly slathering your brain in attention residue.
Exactly. You are severely dampening your cognitive performance. To produce at an elite level, you have to work for extended periods with full concentration on a single task. You have to let the residue clear.
Okay, the science of myelin and attention residue is ironclad. But wait, I have a question.
Sure.
If attention residue is such a career killer, how do you explain Jack Dorsey?
Jack Dorsey.
Right. The guy helped found Twitter. He launched Square. He literally runs both companies simultaneously. He famously stands at a stand-up desk all day in the middle of the floor, and he explicitly encourages his employees to interrupt him constantly so he can hear what's going on.
Yeah, he does.
His attention residue must be a mile thick, yet he is a billionaire.
Yeah.
He's highly rewarded in our economy. So how does a guy who thrives on distraction fit into this deep work hypothesis?
It is the ultimate paradox, right? But it comes down to what is known as the CEO exception.
CEO exception.
Yeah. Jack Dorsey is a high-level executive of two major corporations. The lifestyle of these executives is unavoidably distracted, but that is because their specific role requires it. A good CEO is essentially a hard-to-automate decision engine.
A decision engine. I like that.
Right. They have built up this massive repository of business experience over decades. Their job is not to sit down and write code or draft marketing copy. Their job is to be presented with inputs all day long, emails, meetings, urgent crises, and to process them using their intuition to make quick, final decisions.
So they aren't the ones doing the deep work themselves.
Yeah.
Their value comes from rapid synthesis.
Exactly. To ask a CEO of a Fortune 500 company to lock themselves in an office for 4 hours to think deeply about a single localized problem is actually a massive waste of what makes them valuable.
Right.
It is much more efficient for them to hire 3 incredibly smart subordinates, have them do the deep work to research the problem, and then bring their refined solutions to the CEO for a final, rapid decision.
Okay, so the danger is when mid-level managers or entry-level coders try to emulate Jack Dorsey.
Precisely. Unless you are a high-level executive at a major corporation, you cannot extrapolate their work style to your own. For the vast majority of knowledge workers, distraction is not a job requirement. It's a catastrophic hindrance.
Okay, that makes so much sense. We've clearly established that deep work is the definitive superpower. It builds myelin to help you learn, it eliminates attention residue to help you produce, and it makes you highly valuable.
Yes.
So if depth is so incredibly valuable, why is the modern business world actively hostile to it? Why have we seemingly abandoned depth in favor of absolute chaos?
It is honestly one of the most baffling realities of the modern workplace. The physical and digital trends in business are actively destroying our capacity for deep work.
Give me an example.
Well, let's look at the cult of the open office. Think about Facebook's headquarters. It's a 10-acre room designed to hold thousands of employees on movable furniture. Mark Zuckerberg called it the largest open floor plan in the world.
A 10-acre room.
Yeah. Or look at Square, Jack Dorsey's company, buying an old newspaper building and having everyone work shoulder to shoulder on long shared desks. The stated goal for all of this architectural chaos is serendipity. The idea that people will randomly bump into each other and spark brilliant new collaborative ideas.
But the reality on the ground is just massive, inescapable distraction. You can't concentrate on a complex algorithm when 3,000 people are talking, laughing, and eating around you. You're constantly subjected to everyone else's noise.
Exactly. And it extends far beyond physical architecture. It's the relentless push for constant digital connectivity. Instant messaging tools like Slack have become essentially the nervous system of the modern office. IBM was once clocked sending 2.5 million instant messages internally every single day.
2.5 million.
Yeah. And there's also a pervasive push for serious content producers to act like social media influencers. Take Alyssa Rubin, for example. She's an incredibly serious, hard-hitting war reporter for the New York Times.
Right.
She has reported from the front lines in Kabul. She investigated the Rwandan genocide. She's put herself in immense physical danger to write deeply impactful stories. Yet she is pressured by her employer to maintain an active Twitter presence.
Think about how absurd that is. Asking a Pulitzer-caliber war reporter to interrupt her intense, dangerous investigative journalism to send a 140-character thought into the void. It seems utterly counterproductive.
Yeah.
Why do companies insist on these practices if they actively destroy the value their employees are trying to create?
Because of a phenomenon called the metric black hole.
The metric black hole.
Yes. In many knowledge work jobs, it is incredibly difficult to objectively measure the bottom-line financial impact of a specific daily behavior. If you are an assembly line worker, the metrics are crystal clear. It's easy to measure if a new wrench helps you assemble more widgets per hour. The data tells you instantly if the tool is good or bad.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you are a PR executive, how do you mathematically measure the exact financial impact of spending an hour responding to Slack messages versus an hour sitting in silence drafting a brilliant press release? You just can't.
And because we can't easily measure the impact, bad habits flourish. We don't have the hard data to prove that open offices and instant messaging are actively hurting the bottom line, so the bad ideas just go unchallenged.
Exactly. Take the case of Tom Cochran, the former chief technology officer of Atlantic Media. He had this nagging suspicion about email, so he decided to actually track it. He found he was personally receiving over 500 emails a week and sending nearly 300. He did the math. Even if he only spent 30 seconds reading and processing each message, that meant he was spending an hour and a half every single day just moving information around.
Wow.
He was acting as a highly paid human network router. And no one at the company realized the massive financial cost of this behavior because the metric black hole hides it entirely.
So without clear metrics to guide us, human nature just takes over. We naturally gravitate toward the principle of least resistance. In a business setting, without clear feedback on what behaviors are actually valuable, we default to whatever is easiest and causes the least friction in the moment.
Yes, exactly.
So much easier to demand an immediate answer via instant messenger than to plan your project schedule ahead of time. It's easier to hit reply all and bounce a confusing problem to a colleague than to sit down, do the deep work, and solve it yourself.
Which leads to perhaps the most dangerous trend of all in the modern office: using busyness as a proxy for actual productivity.
Oh, this is a big one.
In the absence of clear indicators of what it means to be productive and valuable, many knowledge workers panic. They feel the need to prove they are working hard, so they turn backward toward an industrial-era indicator of productivity, doing lots of stuff in a highly visible manner.
Think about your own office right now. If you went to a car factory and you saw a worker just frantically waving their hands in the air, picking up wrenches and throwing them down, sweating profusely, spinning in circles, you wouldn't think they were a good worker.
No, you'd think they were having a breakdown.
Right. They are incredibly busy, but they aren't actually building a car.
But in knowledge work, we reward that exact behavior.
We really do. We see people frantically sending emails at 11 p.m., jumping from meeting to meeting, making sure their Slack icon is permanently green so everyone knows they are online.
Yeah.
They think that because their hands are moving on the keyboard, they are building the car. But knowledge extraction is often completely at odds with that kind of frantic busyness. True value creation in the modern economy often looks like staring out a window for an hour or sitting quietly with a notepad and pen.
That's spot on. If you look at someone like Adam Grant, the renowned Wharton professor, he would literally disappear for days at a time to write his research papers. He would put a harsh out-of-office responder on his email, even though he was sitting right there in his office.
Wow.
He wasn't visibly busy to his colleagues. He wasn't walking the halls holding a clipboard. But his deep, invisible strategy produced a massive amount of peer-reviewed value, ultimately making him the youngest full professor in Wharton's history.
Okay, so that sets the economic stage perfectly. Deep work makes you incredibly valuable in a distracted economy, and the fact that most offices discourage it just makes your ability to go deep even more of a competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
But I have to ask, is deep work just a tool for economic ruthlessness? Like, is it just a strategy to maximize your corporate output so you can buy a nicer car? Because the second half of this philosophy argues it goes much deeper than that. Deep work is fundamentally meaningful on a human level.
It really is. And to illustrate this profound shift, we can look at Rick Furrer. He is a Wisconsin blacksmith who specializes in ancient metalworking practices. He uses a 1,500-year-old technique to smelt crucible steel.
Okay.
He takes a dense, stubborn ingot of raw metal and painstakingly shapes it into a Viking-era sword blade. It is back-breaking labor. It requires 100 blows by hand with a heavy hammer to accomplish what an industrial machine could do in a single strike.
That sounds brutish, exhausting, and completely inefficient.
Economically, it is. But Furrer's work provides a stark, necessary contrast to the bewildered psychic landscape of the modern knowledge worker. Furrer has a tangible, undeniable indication that he has succeeded in his day's labor. He can physically hold the sword. He can see the evidence of his own hands, his own skill, his own focus.
Right.
The modern knowledge worker, buried in abstract emails, endless strategy meetings, and PowerPoint decks, rarely gets that tangible satisfaction. It leads to a persistent sense of professional malaise. But the argument here is that we can find that same profound personal satisfaction in abstract knowledge work if we embrace depth. There are 3 core arguments for this: neurological, psychological, and philosophical.
Okay, let's start with the neurological argument. This centers on the story of science writer Winifred Gallagher, right?
Yes. Winifred Gallagher received a terrifying advanced cancer diagnosis. It was the kind of news that just stops your world. But walking away from the hospital, she made a sudden intuitive decision. She was not going to let the disease monopolize her attention.
Hmm.
She decided to focus intensely on the good, simple things in her life: movies, long walks, an evening martini with her husband. And to her surprise, despite the physically grueling cancer treatments, she found that her life during that period was often quite pleasant.
Because she discovered a fundamental neurological truth, right? Our circumstances don't dictate our happiness. Our attention dictates our happiness. She summarized it perfectly. Who you are is the sum of what you focus on.
That's it, exactly. Decades of neurological research in the cognitive appraisal of emotions back this up. Our brains construct our worldview based entirely on what we pay attention to. If you spend your day engaged in deep work, whether you are smithing a sword or optimizing a complex computer algorithm, your mind perceives your world as rich in meaning and importance.
Because it's focused.
Right. Your brain assumes that whatever requires this much focus must be deeply significant. But there is a hidden, equally important neurological benefit. Deep concentration literally hijacks your attention apparatus. It requires so much cognitive bandwidth that it prevents you from noticing the persistent, trivial, unpleasant things that populate our daily lives.
Oh, that makes so much sense. If you are completely absorbed in coding a new app or writing a chapter of a book, you aren't obsessing over the rude comment a coworker made yesterday, or the fact that your morning train was late, or like the political arguing on Twitter.
You literally don't have the bandwidth.
Your brain doesn't have the spare processing power to care. But if you spend your day just shallowly refreshing your inbox and scrolling social media, you are leaving the door wide open for all those petty anxieties to rush in. You are actively building a worldview entirely out of stress, irritation, and triviality.
Which leads directly into the psychological argument for meaning. This is driven by the famous psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He pioneered the concept of flow.
Flow states, yeah.
To study this, he used a technique called the experience sampling method. He gave subjects pagers that beeped at random times throughout the day, asking them to immediately record what they were doing and how they felt. And he discovered something incredibly counterintuitive about human nature. Most people assume that relaxation makes them happy. We think our ultimate goal is to just lie on a beach with a drink. But the hard data showed that the best, most satisfying moments in our lives usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its absolute limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile.
That is wild. We are actually happiest when our minds are stretched to the limit. And deep work is practically the laboratory definition of stretching your mind to its limit.
Exactly. Deep work is an engine for generating flow states. And building your working life around the regular, reliable experience of flow is a proven path to deep psychological satisfaction. Which brings us to the third argument, the philosophical one.
Okay.
This comes from scholars Hubert Dreyfus and Sean Dorrance-Kelly. They explore how the concept of sacredness and meaning has evolved in human history. To illustrate, they use the example of a master wheelwright, someone who crafts wooden wagon wheels by hand.
How does making a wooden wheel connect to philosophy?
Well, Dreyfus and Kelly point out that a master wheelwright doesn't just forcefully impose his will on the wood like an industrial machine, because each piece of wood is distinct. It has its own personality, its own grain, its own flaws.
Right.
The craftsman cultivates an intimate, respectful relationship with the material. He finds the inherent shining value within it and works to reveal it. The philosophical meaning is cited outside the individual ego. The value is inherent in the material and the devotion to the task itself.
Now, I have to stop you here.
Yeah.
Because I can totally see the sacredness and the shining value in forging a Viking sword or meticulously shaping a piece of oak into a beautiful wheel. There is a romance to physical craft. But how on earth do you find sacred meaning in optimizing a SQL database or writing a corporate PR press release? There is no physical wood to shape. It's just pixels on a screen.
It's the most common roadblock people face with this concept, and the answer requires a shift in perspective. The meaning doesn't necessarily come from the output itself. It comes from the commitment to craftsmanship and elite execution. When a programmer pushes their cognitive limits to write elegant, concise, perfectly structured code, they are cultivating the subtle virtues of their medium, exactly like the wheelwright shaping the wood. When a PR writer agonizes over the perfect phrasing to make a press release sing, they are engaging in the craft of language.
I
The
see.
task of extracting meaning from your profession requires deep work. Depth transforms a distracted, draining corporate obligation into something deeply satisfying. As the book states simply, a deep life is a good life.
So we've certainly established the why. Deep work makes you economically invaluable and personally fulfilled. But it's time to transition to the how. So you've bought into the philosophy. You want to go deep. The first rule is simply work deeply. Because you can't just wake up on a Tuesday and say, I'm going to use my willpower to focus today. If you rely on willpower, you will lose. Willpower is a trap.
It absolutely is, and the science proves it. Consider a fascinating 2012 study led by Wilhelm Hoffman and Roy Baumeister. They gave 205 adults beepers that went off at random times throughout the day, asking them to record what desires they were currently feeling or had felt recently. They gathered over 7,500 samples.
Wow.
The result was staggering. People fight desires all day long. Desire is the norm, not the exception. And the specific desires to check email, surf the web, or watch TV were incredibly strong and persistent.
The digital world is engineered to tempt us. And the study found that people failed to resist those digital distractions about half the time, right?
Because of the finite willpower problem, Baumeister's voluminous research proves that willpower is not a boundless, magical manifestation of your moral character. It is fundamentally like a muscle that tires with use.
Like a muscle.
Right. Every single time you resist the urge to check Facebook, every time you stop yourself from glancing at your phone, you deplete a tiny bit of your willpower reserve. Eventually, the muscle fatigues, you run out of willpower, and the distraction wins. Therefore, you cannot rely on sheer willpower to initiate and sustain deep work. You need systems. You need ironclad routines to bypass willpower entirely.
Which brings us to the 4 distinct philosophies of deep work scheduling. You have to pick the one that actually fits the reality of your life and career. Let's start with the most extreme, the most uncompromising approach. The monastic philosophy.
Right, the monastic philosophy. This involves total ruthless isolation. You maximize deep efforts by eliminating or radically minimizing all shallow obligations from your professional life.
Total isolation.
Yeah. Take computer scientist Donald Knuth. He completely dropped email. If you want to reach him, you have to write a physical letter, put a stamp on it, and send it to a postal address. His assistant sorts the mail, and Knuth only looks at the batch once every 3 months.
Once every 3 months. Or Neil Stephenson, the brilliant cyberpunk author. He avoids speaking engagements entirely and has no email address publicly available on his website.
For these people, their professional success comes from doing exactly one thing exceptionally well, writing brilliant code or writing groundbreaking novels. So they organize their entire existence to get lots of long, consecutive, uninterrupted time chunks, and they ruthlessly eliminate everything else.
But let's be real. If most of us listening just stopped answering emails and demanded our boss send us a letter via the post office, we would be fired by Friday.
Very quickly fired, yes.
The monastic approach is amazing if you are a tenured professor or a best-selling novelist, but it's impractical for the rest of us. So what's the next option?
The bimodal philosophy. This involves splitting your time into distinct, deep, and open stretches. You are alternating between 2 modes of working. The crucial detail here is that the deep stretches must be substantial, at least a full day or several days at a time.
Oh, he uses this one.
Adam Grant, the Wharton professor we mentioned earlier, is the master of this. On an annual scale, he stacks all of his teaching obligations and committee meetings into the fall semester, leaving his spring and summer entirely open for uninterrupted deep research.
Oh, that's smart.
And on a weekly scale, during his research semesters, he takes 3 to 4 day binges of total isolation. He shuts his office door, puts on his out-of-office autoresponder, and works without interruption. But outside of those bimodal deep stretches, when he is in his open mode, he is famously accessible to students and colleagues.
It's a great balance, but again, what if you can't disappear for 3 days at a time? What if you have a standard 9-to-5 corporate job with daily meetings?
Then you need the rhythmic philosophy. This is often called the chain method, popularized by comedian Jerry Seinfeld's advice to write a joke every single day and don't break the chain.
Don't break the chain.
It's about establishing a relentless daily rhythm, doing deep work at the exact same time every day until it becomes an automatic habit. Consider Brian Chappell, who was struggling to write a complex academic dissertation while working full-time. He adopted a rhythmic approach. He woke up at 5:30 a.m. every single morning and worked on his dissertation until 7:30 a.m. before showering and heading to his day job.
That takes discipline.
It does, but by doing this every day without fail, he was producing a draft of a thesis chapter every 2 or 3 weeks.
The beauty of the rhythmic approach is that it completely bypasses willpower, because you don't even have to make a decision about whether or not to work today. It's just what you do at 5:30 a.m. It becomes muscle memory.
Exactly.
But there's one more philosophy, and this is for the people whose schedules are utterly chaotic, who are constantly on the move. The journalistic philosophy.
The journalistic philosophy is fitting deep work in wherever possible in your schedule, acting like a reporter on a deadline. The quintessential example is Walter Isaacson, the famous biographer and journalist who wrote the definitive books on Steve Jobs and Albert Einstein.
Oh, yeah.
During his early career, he shared a summer beach rental with friends. While everyone else was relaxing on the patio having a drink, Isaacson would retreat to his bedroom for 20 minutes or an hour at a time, pound away on his typewriter in a state of absolute focus, and then come back down and rejoin the party, totally relaxed.
Wow.
He wrote a 900-page epic biography on the side while working as a top magazine editor by just dropping into deep work mode whenever a gap opened up in his day.
But a massive word of warning here. The journalistic approach is not for beginners. It takes immense cognitive practice to instantly switch your brain from shallow conversational mode to deep writing mode without burning through all your willpower just trying to focus. It's a high-level skill.
Very high level.
But regardless of which philosophy you choose, sometimes you need a jolt to get started. Sometimes you need a grand gesture.
Yes. Grand gestures involve radical changes in your environment, almost always paired with a significant investment of effort or money, to signal to your brain that the work you are about to do is incredibly important.
Right. Like J.K. Rowling.
Yes. She was struggling to finish the final Harry Potter book. Her home office was too distracting, kids running around, barking dogs, window cleaners. So she checked into a suite at the historic 5-star Balmoral Hotel in downtown Edinburgh, paying over $1,000 a day just to have a quiet place to write.
And Bill Gates famously took his think weeks, where he would isolate himself in a remote lakeside cabin with a stack of papers and books cut off from all Microsoft employees.
And Peter Shankman, an entrepreneur who has ADHD and realized he focused best when confined on airplanes, he was facing a tight 2-week deadline for an entire book manuscript, so he booked a $4,000 round-trip business class flight to Tokyo.
That's crazy.
He wrote the entire flight there, drank an espresso in the business class lounge in Japan upon landing, turned right around, flew back, and wrote the whole way home. He finished the manuscript in 30 hours.
30 hours?
The sheer novelty and the financial commitment of the grand gesture help overcome your brain's natural resistance to deep focus. You tell yourself, I just spent $4,000 to be in this seat. I better write this book.
Okay, so you have a schedule, you have a philosophy, maybe you've booked a hotel room to write. How do you actually execute when you sit down? It's not just staring at a wall. We have to look at the 40X framework, the 4 disciplines of execution, drawn from business consultant Clayton Christensen. It separates what you want to do from how you actually get it done.
Right. Structure is vital for execution. First, you must focus on the wildly important. Don't just sit down and say, I want to work deeply today. Have a specific, ambitious, narrowly defined goal that will return tangible benefits. I'm going to finish the methodology section of this paper.
Specific. Got it.
Second, keep a compelling scoreboard. Track your deep work hours visibly on a calendar on your wall. Keep a tally. Third, act on lead measures. This means you measure the time you spend in deep work, not just the final output. If you try to measure pages written, you might get discouraged if it's a hard day. Measure the hours spent focused. And finally, discipline 4. Don't assume you must work entirely alone.
Wait, I thought deep work was fundamentally about isolation, locking yourself in a tower.
Execution requires isolation, but collaboration can heavily enhance the strategy. The whiteboard effect is incredibly powerful. Working collaboratively with a brilliant colleague at a whiteboard can push you much deeper into a complex problem than you could ever go alone. You can bounce ideas off each other and spot flaws instantly.
Oh, I see.
The key is to collaborate dynamically on the ideas and the strategy, but then retreat to total isolation for the actual execution of the work.
And after all that intense focus, after pushing your brain to the absolute limit, you have to stop. This introduces the idleness paradox. The brain actually needs rest to do deep work. This isn't laziness, it's biology. Tim Kreider, a successful author, regularly retreats to an undisclosed location without internet or TV, just to let his brain rest and observe buttercups and stink bugs in the woods. We can't all flee to a cabin in the woods every afternoon, but we must have a strict shutdown ritual at the end of our workday.
A shutdown ritual is non-negotiable. At the end of the workday, you must systematically review your tasks, plan for the next day, and then explicitly shut down your consideration of work issues until the next morning. No after-dinner email checks on your phone, no mental replays of stressful conversations while you're trying to watch a movie.
You have to disconnect.
You have to leave your mind completely free. Decades of psychology research on the unconscious mind show that regularly resting your brain actually improves the quality of your deep work the next day. Your unconscious mind needs time to untangle complex problems while you relax.
It's exactly like a smartphone battery. If you leave all your background apps, running all those shallow tasks, unanswered emails, and low-level work worries, they are constantly draining your processing power.
Yeah.
Your mental battery will be sitting at 10% before you even wake up and try to open the one heavy-duty app you actually need for your deep work.
That's a great way to put it.
You have to deliberately swipe those apps closed at the end of the day.
So you've built your schedule, you have a shutdown ritual, you time block your day, you sit down at your desk, close the door, and 5 minutes later, your brain is screaming at you to check your phone.
Yeah.
Scheduling the time is completely useless if your brain has been fundamentally wired to panic the second it gets bored. We have to transition from just making time for depth to actively training the mind to endure it. This is rule 2. Embrace boredom.
And make no mistake, our minds are in terrible shape. The research on this is frightening. Take Clifford Nass, a researcher at Stanford who studied chronic multitaskers. He wanted to see if people who multitask all the time actually develop a special cognitive ability to juggle information. What did he find?
He found the exact opposite. Nass discovered that chronic multitaskers are essentially mental wrecks.
Mental wrecks.
They lose the fundamental ability to filter out irrelevancy even when they are actively trying to focus on a single task. They can't manage their working memory. They initiate parts of their brain that are completely irrelevant to the task at hand.
Wow.
If you constantly give in to the slightest hint of boredom, like waiting in line at the grocery store for 30 seconds, by immediately pulling out your phone to scroll, you are permanently rewiring your brain's reward centers to crave constant, novel distraction.
So how do we fix it? How do we rehab our brains?
The core shift in your daily habit is this. Don't take breaks from distraction. Instead, take breaks from focus.
Let's clarify that. Most people think, I'll surf the web all day and then take a break to focus for an hour. You're saying that's backward.
Completely backward. You need to schedule your internet use in advance. Keep a notepad by your desk. Write down the exact time you were allowed to use the internet next, say, 3:00 p.m. Until 3:00 p.m., you absolutely cannot go online, no matter what.
Oh, that's tough.
Quarantining your internet use to specific scheduled blocks of time forces you to practice enduring boredom and resisting urges during the other blocks. It's cognitive weightlifting.
You can also use specific training methods, like working like Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes, Theodore Roosevelt is a fascinating case study in intensity. When he was a freshman at Harvard, he had an astounding array of interests: boxing, wrestling, bodybuilding, dance lessons, and an obsessive passion for naturalism. He was constantly active.
Sounds exhausting.
Yet he still achieved top grades in a rigorous academic environment. He did this by employing intense, artificial deadlines for his studying. He would dedicate a specific, highly limited window of time to his schoolwork, and he would attack it with blistering intensity.
Blistering intensity.
He would read and write with every free neuron to beat the buzzer. By artificially compressing the time available, he forced himself to reach levels of concentration that literally didn't allow for a single daydream or distraction to enter his mind.
I love that strategy. Give yourself an impossibly tight deadline, set a timer, and sprint. But there's another training method that seems a bit more zen: productive meditation.
Productive meditation is a practice where you take a period in which you're occupied physically but not mentally, like walking to work, jogging, or driving your commute, and you focus your attention entirely on a single, well-defined professional problem. It could be outlining an article, solving a math proof, or strategizing a tough negotiation. And just like traditional mindfulness meditation, when your mind inevitably wanders away from the problem, you must notice the wandering and firmly bring your attention back to the problem.
Now wait, let's be realistic here. If I try productive meditation while taking my dog for a walk, I'm guaranteed to spend the first 2 minutes thinking about my work project and the next 20 minutes daydreaming about what I'm having for lunch or replaying an argument I had a week ago.
Right.
The mind wants to drift. How do you actually stay on track and make this useful?
It is remarkably difficult at first, which is why there is a very specific structured process you must follow. First, you must identify the variables of the problem before you start walking. If you are writing a chapter of a book, what are the key points you need to hit? Have them ready in your working memory.
Variables, okay.
Second, define the specific next step question. Don't just walk out the door and think vaguely about the chapter. Ask yourself a highly specific question. How am I going to effectively transition from the introduction to the first piece of evidence?
Specificity is key.
Finally, once you solve that specific question during your walk, consolidate your gains by clearly reviewing the answer in your mind several times. This structured cycle variables, next step question, consolidation, prevents your mind from drifting to lunch because you always have a specific actionable target for your attention.
It's truly mental athletics. It reminds me of Daniel Kilov, who went from being a struggling student diagnosed with ADD to becoming a memory champion and a top academic. He didn't do it with medication. He did it by intensely, deliberately training his concentration through rote memorization exercises. It's a muscle you can build no matter where you are starting from.
You can absolutely build it, but to truly build that skill, to truly embrace boredom and protect your capacity for focus, you eventually have to confront the elephant in the room. You have to eliminate the most perfectly engineered distraction machines in human history.
Which brings us to Section 6. Rule 3, quit social media. Now, before everyone panics and thinks we are telling you to throw your router into the ocean and move to a cave, let's look at a nuanced example. Let's look at Baraton Thurston.
Ah, yeah.
He was once described as the most connected man in the world. He worked in digital media. He participated in 59,000 Gmail conversations in a single year, and he posted 1,500 times on Facebook. He was totally, completely burned out. So he decided to do a massive 25-day digital detox. No Facebook, no Twitter, no Foursquare, no email.
And while he felt fantastic and refreshed during the detox, the ultimate problem is that detoxes are too binary. They don't teach you how to live in the real world. As soon as his 25 days were up, he slid right back into his old, fractured, distracted habits. The idea that you must either completely quit the internet or accept total, overwhelming distraction is a false choice. It's a false dichotomy. Instead, we need to introduce the craftsman approach to tool selection.
The craftsman approach pushes back against a very insidious mindset that plagues the modern worker, what is called the any benefit trap. The any benefit mindset says, I should use Twitter because it might help me connect with a reader someday, or I should use Facebook because I might see a baby picture of an old friend, or I should be on LinkedIn just in case a recruiter is looking for me.
The any benefit approach completely ignores the cost of the tool. It only looks at the microscopic potential upside. The craftsman approach, on the other hand, asks you to act like a master artisan evaluating a new tool for their workshop.
Okay, how so?
You must identify the core factors that determine success and happiness in your professional and personal life. You only adopt a new digital tool if its positive impacts on these specific factors substantially outweigh its negative impacts.
To make this concrete, let's apply the craftsman approach to a real case study. The brilliant author Michael Lewis, who wrote Moneyball and The Big Short.
Right. So Michael Lewis wants to write great narrative-driven books that impact culture. That is his core professional goal. The key activities that support that goal are deep, patient research into complex topics and careful, purposeful writing.
Who counts?
Now, if we apply the craftsman approach to Twitter from Michael Lewis, we have to ask, does Twitter substantially improve his ability to research patiently or write carefully? No, it absolutely does not.
Yeah.
The relentless distraction and the pressure to produce bite-sized hot takes actively harms his ability to think deeply.
Exactly.
The massive distraction cost vastly outweighs the minor theoretical benefit of maybe selling a few extra books to a Twitter following, so he doesn't use it.
It is all about opportunity cost. This brings in a classic economic principle. The law of the vital few, also known as the 80-20 rule.
In many settings, 80% of your success comes from just 20% of your activities. If you list the activities that genuinely contribute to your major life goals, a very small number of them are providing the vast bulk of the benefit.
Right.
Social media and infotainment websites are objectively low-impact activities, but they are incredibly addictive, meaning they steal massive amounts of time away from your high-impact 20%. Time is a zero-sum game. Every hour you spend doom-scrolling on Twitter is an hour you are not spending reading a complex book, mastering a new skill, or playing with your kids.
I always think of the any benefit mindset like this. Imagine you keep a rusty, broken bicycle in the middle of your living room. And when your friends ask why on earth it's sitting there, you say, well, the bell on the handlebar still works, and I might need to ring a bell someday.
Yes, that's perfect.
You're completely ignoring how much valuable space that broken bike is taking up. Space you could be using for a comfortable couch or a bookshelf or a dining table, something that actually provides massive daily value to your life.
That is a brilliant analogy. And to help break the addiction to all those broken bicycles taking up space in your phone, you should try a packing party.
A packing party.
This concept comes from Ryan Nicodemus, a minimalist who literally packed everything in his apartment into cardboard boxes as if he were moving. Then, he only unpacked items as he actually needed them over the next month. The suggestion here is to apply this ruthlessly to your digital life.
Okay, how?
Box up your social media apps. Ban yourself from them for 30 days. Don't write a dramatic post announcing your departure. Just delete the apps off your phone and stop logging in. After 30 days, ask yourself 2 brutally honest questions. Would the last 30 days have been notably better if I had been able to use this service? And did people actually care that I wasn't using it?
If the answer is no to both, and it almost always is, quit the service for good. But here is the catch. If we quit these highly addictive services, we are suddenly going to have a lot of empty time on our hands in the evenings. And empty time can be terrifying. We have to actively reclaim our leisure time.
We can draw inspiration here from Arnold Bennett's 1910 book, How to Live on 24 Hours a Day. Bennett criticized the typical knowledge worker of his era who treated their 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. job as the day and treated the hours before and after work as just a prologue and epilogue, usually spent collapsing in an armchair.
Guilt as charged.
Right. Bennett argues we should treat our free 16 hours as a day within a day. Instead of defaulting to addictive, mind-numbing websites to unwind, we should fill our evenings with deliberate, high-quality leisure.
High-quality leisure like reading challenging books, engaging in structured hobbies, exercising, or spending real face-to-face time with people. If you plan your leisure time in advance, the psychological grip of addictive websites loosens significantly because your brain is occupied with something of much higher quality.
Which brings us to the final hurdle. Rule 4, drain the shallows. Even if you've mastered your willpower, trained your focus to endure boredom and quit Twitter, you still live in the real world. You have a boss, you have a team, you have administrative logistical obligations.
Yeah, you can't escape it.
You cannot eliminate shallow work entirely. So how do you manage it without letting it drown your deep work?
First, you have to acknowledge human biological limits. We have to look at the deep work limit. Consider Jason Fried, the CEO of the software company Basecamp. He experimented with a 4-day workweek for his employees. And what he found, which is heavily supported by cognitive research, is that even the most highly trained humans can only sustain about 4 hours of true, intense deep work a day anyway.
4 hours is the ceiling. Once you push past that 4-hour limit of intense concentration, your brain fatigues and you experience severe diminishing returns. So the goal of draining the shallows isn't to somehow work deeply for 8 straight hours. That's impossible.
Right.
The goal is to corral and tame the shallow work so it doesn't interrupt and crowd out those precious 4 hours of deep capacity.
The most powerful and arguably the most extreme strategy to do this is to schedule every single minute of your workday.
It sounds incredibly rigid, but it is phenomenally effective. The practice is called time blocking. You take a physical notebook and draw a box down the page for every hour of your workday. Then you assign specific activities to blocks of time. You might have a 2-hour block dedicated entirely to writing code, followed by a batched 30-minute block solely for processing email and returning phone calls.
Now, anyone who has ever worked in an office knows what happens next. You make this beautiful color-coded schedule, and by 10:15 a.m., your boss bursts in with an emergency, a meeting runs 40 minutes long, and your entire schedule is destroyed.
And that is perfectly fine. When your schedule inevitably breaks, you just cross it out, take a breath, and redraw the blocks for the remainder of the day based on the new reality.
Just redraw it.
Yeah. The point of time blocking isn't to stubbornly stick to a plan no matter what happens. The point is to maintain a continuous, intentional awareness of what you are doing with your time. Most knowledge workers spend their day on autopilot, letting whim, boredom, and the external requests of others drive their schedule. Time blocking forces you to treat your time with immense respect.
I always hear a specific fear when I talk to people about this. They say, if I schedule every minute of my day, won't I turn into a robot? Won't I lose my creativity? What happens if a brilliant, spontaneous idea strikes at 2 p.m., but my schedule says I'm supposed to be doing expense reports?
It's a very common fear, but the reality of practicing this proves the exact opposite. Structure actually enables spontaneity.
How so?
If you have a brilliant creative insight in the middle of the afternoon, you can look at your time-blocked schedule, see exactly what tasks you are displacing, and easily pick at your blocks to make room for this new creative burst. You can dive into that spontaneous idea without the nagging background anxiety that you are dropping important balls, because all of your other obligations are already accounted for and rescheduled in later blocks.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But here's a practical question. When we are blocking our time, how do we evaluate the tasks? How do we even know objectively if a task is shallow or deep? Some tasks blur the line. We need a heuristic.
We do, and the most effective one is the college grad heuristic. Look at the task on your plate and ask yourself this specific question. How long would it take in months to train a smart, recent college graduate with absolutely no specialized training in my field to complete this exact task?
Let's test it. What if the task is taking the quarterly sales data and formatting it into a nice PowerPoint presentation for the Friday meeting?
Well, a smart college grad already knows how to use PowerPoint. It might take them a week to learn the specific company formatting rules and maybe a month to understand what the specific sales metrics mean. So the answer is maybe 2 months of training total. Because the training time is so low, that is objectively a shallow task. It does not leverage rare expertise.
But what if the task is taking raw experimental data, analyzing it, and editing a complex academic paper for submission to a peer-reviewed scientific journal?
That is an entirely different beast.
Yeah.
That requires cutting-edge knowledge of the scientific field, an intuitive understanding of the nuances of the broader literature, and years of diligent study at the graduate level. That might take 50 to 75 months of intense training.
Right.
That is deeply profound work. Once you evaluate all your daily tasks using this heuristic, you can clearly see where your real value lies. You bias your schedule heavily toward the tasks that require 50 months of training, and you ruthlessly batch, delegate, or minimize the tasks that only take a week to learn.
Another powerful strategy to tame the shallows is fixed schedule productivity. This is about working backward from a hard stop. Look at Radhika Nagpal, a researcher who achieved academic tenure at a highly competitive university. She did this while strictly capping her workweek at 50 hours, even when all of her peers were routinely burning themselves out working 70 or 80 hours a week.
She achieved this by setting the time limit first. She decided she would work 50 hours a week, period. That was the unmovable constraint. Then she worked backward to determine what rules and habits were absolutely necessary to satisfy that constraint while still achieving tenure.
That's brilliant.
She aggressively culled the shallow work, she instituted strict quotas on how much travel she would do, and she streamlined her administrative obligations. When you give yourself a fixed schedule, it creates a scarcity mindset around your time, which forces you to be ruthless with what you allow onto your plate.
And part of being ruthless is becoming hard to reach. We have to stop acting like human network routers, instantly available to everyone. We could do this by using sender filters.
Right. A sender filter is a way of setting expectations right at the point of contact. You might put a note on your website contact page, or even in your email signature, detailing exactly what types of requests you will respond to, and stating clearly that you may not reply to everything.
Setting a boundary.
It forces the person reaching out to do a little more work, which naturally filters out the low-value, frivolous requests. But even more importantly, when you do reply to an email, you need to close the loop.
This is a phenomenal concept drawn from productivity expert David Allen. Think about how we usually email. Hey, want to meet for coffee to discuss the project? Sure, when? How about Tuesday? Can't do Tuesday, I'm out of town. Friday. We bounce these emails back and forth, eating up time and attention. Closing the loop stops the bounce.
Exactly. You map out the entire project's next steps in one single comprehensive message. Instead of the bounce, you reply, I'd love to meet. I am free Tuesday at 10 a.m. or Thursday at 2 p.m. If one of those works, please call me at this number. If neither works, please reply with 2 dates and times you are free next week, and I will make one of them work.
Oh, that's so much better.
You process the microproject to its absolute completion in your mind. This reclaims your mental real estate. Less mental clutter in your inbox means more mental resources available for deep thinking.
This has been an incredible, expansive journey through the mechanics, the economics, and the profound philosophy of deep work. To bring this all together, I want to leave you with a legendary story that perfectly encapsulates everything we've talked about. The story of a young Bill Gates.
In the winter of 1974, Bill Gates was a young student at Harvard. He saw the Altair, the world's first personal computer, featured on the cover of Popular Electronics magazine. He immediately realized there was a massive, fleeting opportunity to write software for this new machine.
So what did he do?
He dropped everything else in his life. For 8 straight weeks, he isolated himself and hacked together a version of the basic programming language for the Altair.
And the stories of his focus during this period are legendary. He worked with such blistering, relentless intensity that he would literally collapse into sleep right at his desk, head on the keyboard, in the middle of writing a line of code.
Wow.
He would sleep for an hour, wake up, look at the screen, and pick up typing right where he left off. His partner, Paul Allen, called it a prodigious feat of concentration. That wasn't just boldness. That was the ultimate manifestation of deep work.
And that story highlights the ultimate pragmatic recognition of this entire deep dive. Committing to deep work isn't some moral, puritanical stance against technology. It's not about being a Luddite or pretending the internet doesn't exist.
Right.
It is a cold, hard, pragmatic recognition that the ability to concentrate is what actually gets valuable things done in this world. Distraction isn't inherently evil. It's just that endless distraction doesn't allow you to write the code that starts a billion-dollar industry in 8 weeks. Deep work does.
Which brings us to our final, provocative thought. I want you to think about Homo sapiens depensis, this idea that our species evolved to find profound neurological, psychological, and philosophical fulfillment in deep, focused effort. If deep work is literally the environment in which our human brains flourish most optimally,
then this raises a chilling question for all of us to ponder. By willingly surrendering our days to the fractured, shallow, algorithmically driven dopamine hits of modern technology, by living our entire lives reacting to our inboxes and endlessly scrolling our social media feeds, are we not just hurting our careers? Are we actually denying our own biological and evolutionary potential as human beings? What does it mean for the future of our species if we collectively forget how to go deep?
it's a staggering thought. And it brings us right back to the cold shores of Lake Zurich, to the woods of Bollingen in 1922. Carl Jung didn't build that stone tower just to get away from his correspondence. He built it because he intuitively understood that to change the world, to unlock the deepest, most complex secrets of the human mind, he had to protect his own mind first. He had to lock the door against the noise. And perhaps in our own modern, hyper-connected way, amidst the pinging of phones and the chaos of the open office, it's time for all of us to start building our own towers.